Welcome back, everyone, to Worlds Beyond with Cam and Ron.
Hey, welcome back, guys. And before we dive in, I just want to give our little opening plug. If you do enjoy our content, we'd love for you to give us a like and a follow on our Twitter page at worldsb_podcast and or a like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It definitely means the world to us. And thanks so much for tuning in.
Yes, please do, and thank you very much. All right, Cam, and we are taking a little spooky season pause for some Star Wars. Ahsoka just finished, calling it a TV, not a series, they're calling it I think they call it a TV miniseries, so presumably it has presumably another season is planned. We can never bank on seasons
Right, I know, yeah.
happening again, as we know so well, but season 1 has wrapped. My overall reaction was good, not great. I liked the characters. I thought the bringing to life all of these, obviously Rosario Dawson has been doing Ahsoka for a few years in Mandalorian. The way she's brought that animated character to life has been very good. I thought all the other cast members brought their respective Rebels characters to life fairly well. Overall, I thought, acting performances for the most part were fine. The story I thought was kind of typical of a lot of the Star Wars shows, or I'd say some of the Star Wars shows, although, way better than the bottom end where you've got Kenobi and Boba Fett, but not quite as good. Obviously doesn't hold a candle to Andor, and probably not quite as good as the best of the Mandalorian, but pretty good. Some high spots. So I'll pause there.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I want to kind of go back a little bit and flesh out my view towards Star Wars at the moment, because I think it really informs how I felt about Ahsoka. Obviously, Rise of Skywalker is trash. Maybe the worst Star Wars movie. And after that, I was kind of like, where can they go from this? They really bungled it. Mandalorian saved me a little bit. I thought the first 2 seasons were great. The end of season 2 where Luke returns and picks up Grogu was incredible, and I thought we might be on kind of an upward trend after that. And then, of course, like you mentioned, Boba Fett came around. They immediately reversed that awesome ending to Mandalorian season 2 and brought Mando and Grogu back together. And that kind of just deflated the whole thing for me, because it was just such a cynical cash grab move. Like, we need to keep making Mandalorian, and no one likes Mandalorian without Baby Yoda. And that just kind of brought everything crashing down. And of course, Boba Fett wasn't all that great. And Kenobi, I actually liked Kenobi as I was watching it, but once it finished, and now that I've had some time to reflect on it, I think that could be probably one of the worst Star Wars things as well. It's just so silly. And I won't go trashing Kenobi too much, because this is about Ahsoka, but I think going into Ahsoka, I was just kind of like, yeah, I'll watch it because it's Star Wars, whatever. And because of that, I think I probably liked it a little bit better than I was expecting to. But I do mostly agree with you. It was good, not great. Some good character work. It was fun seeing everybody in live action. It was definitely... I found it a little bit less kind of... the way I describe it is Baby's first plot line. It's a little bit less Baby's first plot line than Mandalorian is, although I do think Mandalorian had higher highs.
Right.
This one, it seems like Filoni is kind of settling into live action. He's getting his foothold finally, but there was still a lot of wonky areas. I thought the back half was very padded. It probably could have been 6 episodes, maybe even a movie. You had mentioned off-air you would have liked animated series, which like a continuation of Rebels, which I don't disagree with, but I just don't feel like there was enough here to necessitate an entire animated season.
Yeah, I think my point with the animated series is I was almost like, as I'm watching Ahsoka, and especially as I got through most of it, I'm like, I love Clone Wars and Rebels. I love probably the Rebels, slightly more than Clone Wars. But as I got through Ahsoka, I'm just sitting here saying, like, did we need... Because essentially this is... And Filoni even said that. I mean, essentially this is season 5 of Rebels. It's just focused on Ahsoka and her character. And sort of... it's actually not solely through her point of view. But I was like, did this really... How necessary did this feel as a live action show? Would I have been just as happy to see them do a Rebels season 5 as I would... what they produced here, and I could kind of go either way.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually haven't seen Rebels all the way through. I have seen Clone Wars. I love Clone Wars. Rebels never quite hooked me as much, and I think part of that is just because I never got far enough. I've only watched the first season. But that being said, I know enough about Rebels and the story and everything that I didn't have any trouble understanding anything. But it's funny because one of the big kind of things people were saying before Ahsoka came out is how are they going to tie in all of this stuff for people who have never watched Rebels
right.
or Clone Wars. And frankly, I don't think they did a great job with that. I think you really should have some sort of background. I mean, you can watch it and kind of understand everything, but I really felt like so much stuff would have rung completely hollow for someone that didn't have any background, or maybe just like tangential, or have just watched the movies or that sort of thing. So that's not a huge criticism for me, just because it didn't really affect me because I know it, but I was curious to hear what you thought of that. Do you have any different thoughts?
Yeah, I know it's probably a little hard for me because I'm such a fan of Rebels to back up and say, but I think probably I'm somewhere close to where you are, because I think they did try to establish these characters a little bit in the first episodes. That's why I thought the first two episodes kind of were very all over the place, because they were trying to establish these characters sort of outside of their history in Rebels. They showed the big statue of Ezra Bridger on his planet. I forget what the name of his home planet is. And so, okay, so that's why they're so all about trying to find this kid and bring him back. So I think they made an attempt to do it, but probably would be, unless you just said, I'm just going to sit back and watch this Star Wars story and let them tell me this story. I don't think they did a terrible job, but I don't think they did a great job either. Probably they know that they were probably going for an audience that was somewhat familiar with it. So
and ultimately it doesn't really affect our viewing of it,
right?
But I just was interested in knowing. It's interesting. I really liked the first few episodes. I actually thought the front half was better than the back half personally, but it definitely still felt like we were watching Filoni kind of move from animation to live action. There was still a lot of that animation-y dialogue or things that may have flown in animation that in live action didn't quite had me questioning. The thing that comes to mind in particular is Hera's son, how she kept putting him in absolute mortal danger, and he had no I thought maybe he was going to be some sort of ace pilot, young prodigy or something. And of course, they did have, I guess, light spoilers for some of the early episodes. There was some purpose for him being there, but it just took so long. It's why are you? She lets him leave the ship and everything else. And it ultimately, I just felt like you could have had a different way of doing what his character did without him being there. And I don't, was there any indication that Hera was pregnant in Rebels, or is that just one of those?
No, she was.
Oh, okay, interesting. I didn't know that. And of course, I also didn't know that Twi'leks and humans could reproduce, but I guess it just means that they have weird blue hair, I guess, is the only side effect of that. But kind of a small thing, but there were a lot of kind of things like that I think were maybe growing pains of coming from animation, just because I feel like you could have had that same exact plot point in an animation. It might not have felt as kind of weird and egregious as it did. Ultimately, it's not a huge criticism, but just something I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, it's interesting how you probably do unconsciously forgive things in a 30-minute animated show, environment that when it's live action, big budget TV or film, you're you just have a different set of expectations. So,
absolutely. But overall, I see a lot of people trashing the overall kind of plot line online. And I mean, who doesn't? I mean, that's just what the internet is for these days. It's just people to get their anger out and stuff they don't like. But I didn't find it anything there wasn't, as opposed to Obi Wan, where the first thing, the first watch through, I was picking up all of the stuff that just did not make any sense or was just stupid. Like Obi Wan hiding Leia under his cape there and sneaking past all the Imperials. There wasn't anything that stood out as super egregiously stupid on the first watch through. I'm sure if you went through with a fine-tooth comb, and there were some moments in the last episodes where people had just ridiculous plot armor and you'd think something would have happened to them, but overall, I thought there wasn't anything egregious, and I really thought it was carried by some of the performances, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Yeah, I think overall plot wise, I thought it took a while to get off the ground and figure out where we were going. And there was that scene, I think it was at the end of the first episode, or maybe it was the second. There was a scene that sort of mirrored one of the post credit scenes in the final episode of Rebels, which was kind of interesting. And I was almost like, when it happened, I was like, oh, I thought we were past that, but they're actually saying like, no, this is where we're sort of picking up the story.
Oh, interesting, huh?
So that was kind of it was cool, I guess. I thought that the plot built up, and we eventually got to there's Thrawn, and then there's this plot to go bring him back, and so you knew inevitably somehow Ahsoka and her crew and the Rebels crew were going to infiltrate that effort and get there. What I have a problem with Star Wars more and more, with a lot of the more recent Star Wars films and properties, I would say excluding Andor, is the Star Wars technology that is just like basically the technology flexes and diminishes based on the needs of the plot.
I see what you mean.
Like,
right.
All of a sudden, we can, at 1 minute we can fly right up under a starship and it has no idea we're even there and sneaking up on it. And the next minute we're using our scanners to scan the thing. And we gotta, we have to look for somebody, and we're flying all over the place looking for people, and we can't find them. But then, a couple of things, a couple of the moments on Seatos, like when they were looking for Ahsoka, or when her ship crash landed, and then when we were on the ancient Death Mori, whatever they call those witch people, when we were on their planet, and they just send out Sabine to go find Ezra. It's like 1 minute they're sort of able to keep track of her and keep tabs on her, but then in order for the plot to actually go on and make sense, and for her to actually have this journey and not just be found and immediately wiped out, then stuff doesn't work. It's just that's one of the things I find is, especially between Star Wars and Star Trek, I feel like Star Trek at least attempts to be a lot more consistent with their technology, their level of technology than Star Wars does, especially recently.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. No. That's a common complaint I have across. And I even want to. I think you could even apply that to some of the newer MCU properties too. To be honest with you. Yeah. Just especially now that it seems so aimless over in that universe that it kind of has to just kind of adjust things. But not that that's an excuse at all. I just think it's kind of we're so far into these universes that it's almost like not everybody can keep track of the different technologies that have been used in all the different entries, and then obviously the plot has to go on, so you have to be a little bit lenient.
Then getting into some of the finer plot details, I thought Ray Stevenson's character and what is her name, Ivana Sakno's character, that sort of Jedi apprentice, or not Jedi apprentice, I guess. Their characters were very intriguing. Ray Stevenson's great. Rest in peace, Ray Stevenson. And she was great as this just sort of, power-hungry upstart. But their whole thing, it was like he was, on some mission that was greater than all that was happening between him and Ahsoka, greater than his mercenary, job to find Admiral Thrawn, and he had this, he was gonna do something, and then they get to the witch world, they go across the galaxies, and he just goes on a walk, and takes off, and then he just tells her, go find your fortune with Admiral Thrawn and become his right-hand person or whatever. And they just, obviously they can pick that up in another season, but you would have thought we would have gotten some clue.
Right. I thought that was kind of vaguely hinted at by the giant statues on the planet, which were the weird gods from that weird arc of Clone Wars that everyone loves.
Yeah.
And it seemed like it had something to do with that. But they didn't really flesh it out at all in that season. Who knows how they're going to be able to follow that up. Yeah, as much as I thought I loved his character, he was... and Shin Hati. She was great too. I think both of them kind of carried in terms of the show in terms of performances. I mean, he just took the most pedestrian. He's just like Christopher Lee or Ewan McGregor, taking just the most trite dialogue. And actually, I shouldn't say that. The Ahsoka dialogue was actually a huge improvement, I'd say, over Mando and Obi Wan, and obviously the prequels. But it still wasn't anything like great. But he just brings this like weight and gravitas to everything he says and does. That was just like incredible. But and I should say I loved how there were kind of three different villains. There was Thrawn, there was the Night Sisters, and then there was Balin and his apprentice. And I loved that you could tell that it was kind of a shaky alliance between all of them, but they were all going for their own different goals. But there wasn't a big like betrayal at the end. I kind of was expecting the cliched like, oh, they all turned on each other at the last second, which I liked. But yeah, then you kind of have Balin just kind of go off and wander for the rest of the series, which was a little bit disappointing.
And they did hint that Shin Hati, I thought, at least in my opinion, they seemed to hint that she might be having second thoughts, and there is the possibility that she'll turn over a new leaf, so to speak. Morgan Elsbeth, she got wiped out. So just dovetailing, well, a couple more things. I guess just let's cover off on the rest of the notable performances. Grand Admiral Thrawn, Lars Mikkelsen, who knew that Mads had a brother? I didn't. Huh. And he was great. Was he the same guy? Was he the guy that did the voice?
Yes, yeah, he's the voice actor for Thrawn in Rebels, yeah.
He was good. Kind of just had a lot of threatening things to say, and then all of a sudden, like, oh, things are not working out the way I planned, you know.
Right.
So he was good with what he was given to do. I felt like they gave him a lot of kind of rote sort of Thrawn villain guy stuff to say. What I thought was done very well was all of Hayden Christensen's stuff.
I loved all that. Yeah.
And his interactions with Ahsoka and all the flashbacks to their interactions in Clone Wars and some of their key interactions in Rebels, and being in that sort of other world where you can travel between the different times and locations. I thought all that stuff was done really, really well. The de-aging CGI.
Oh yeah, that was good.
I thought worked great. The girl Ariana, I'm just reading off of Wikipedia, the Ariana Greenblatt who played the young Ahsoka, she was very good. So all of that stuff, it's almost like, you know, kind of the nostalgia stuff. Everything that sort of pointed back to the animated shows, you know, really resonated with me. I thought Iman Esfandi, who played Ezra, was good. You know, obviously a much more grown-up version of Ezra.
Yeah, I thought he really embodied the character very well, more so than some of the other returning characters from animation.
I thought Natasha Bordizzo did a good job as Sabine Wren. It was interesting seeing her little arc about whether to sort of just kind of embrace her past as a Mandalorian warrior or to become a Jedi was interesting.
It did kind of come out of left field.
Yeah.
I don't remember. Yeah. Like, obviously, I haven't watched all of it, but I don't remember hearing about any sort of hint that she was at all Force sensitive. But they seem to be playing fast and loose. They can't seem to decide between whether Force sensitivity is something everybody has, or if it's a familial thing, or if it's kind of in the middle. And I think that goes back all the way to the beginning of Star Wars. But I feel like there was more of an emphasis on people who couldn't use the Force at all. Back then, and now it seems like it's more of everybody can use it if they just believe hard enough or whatever. Yeah. So it seemed, and I don't have a huge problem with that, but it did seem to kind of come out of left field and was almost a little bit manufactured just to give Ahsoka and Sabine something to have a little bit of conflict or interaction over, as opposed to them just like being together and just doing everything. So I think it worked. And up until the very last episode, it's not like she was doing anything super crazy with the Force. So I didn't have a huge problem with it, but I did feel a little like kind of thrown in there.
And it's funny, like it's been a few years since I've watched Rebels, so I can't recall. I don't know if the show was written to imply that Ahsoka and Sabine in between the end of Rebels and this had some kind of thing where she did some training with her, because I don't recall that from the show. I recall Sabine training with Kanan Jarrus when they found the Darksaber, but not like doing Jedi training with Ahsoka. So I don't know where, but anyway, be that.
It did seem to imply that it was in the space in between that we haven't seen.
That's what I thought.
Which makes it almost even weirder to kind of throw it out like that. But I mean, you have to do what you have to do, I guess.
And then Mary Elizabeth Winstead was fine as Hera. I felt like she didn't have a whole lot to do besides just sort of try to get everybody permission to go where they needed to go and run interference with the government. She didn't get a whole lot to do other than that. And Hera was, wasn't often a featured character in Rebels. She definitely had the times when they focused on her quite a bit, but other than that,
I kind of feel similarly about Natasha Bordizio there. I thought she was great. She really embodied like just the look and attitude of Sabine, but what she was given wasn't the most like dynamic. She felt a little dry at times, more so than some of the other characters, but I think that was more just what she was given as opposed to her as an actress, because I thought when she shined, she did really well.
When she found Ezra and they had their reunion, I thought that was great. That really harkened back to Rebels and the relationship they had. But other than that, she was just given sort of the conflict over, am I a Jedi or am I not a Jedi, or training to be a Jedi? And then, her big decision on Seattle to
not destroy the map there.
But yeah, for other thoughts I had, and I'm interested in, I always like to hear you talk about, effects and productions and things like that. I did think all the fight scenes, especially in the finale or the last couple of episodes, were very good.
Oh yeah.
Lightsaber battles. I mean, there was nothing like mind-blowing or new that we haven't seen before. Like in The Force Awakens, we saw some stuff with Force battles and lightsaber battles that, there was some cool stuff you hadn't seen before. So, but I will say they weren't quite as thrilling. I mean, I think, obviously animation gives you license to do, like Ahsoka is just like otherworldly in her fighting skills and speed and everything else. In the animated show, and you just can't reproduce that in live action without being a total CGI. But I thought overall,
I loved the fight scenes. The lightsaber battles were great. The standout for me, I liked, and this is just me kind of remembering the good old days of when I was a kid and liked all these characters and like was obsessed with these characters that had little to no substance to them. But I loved that. What was it? Marok, the knight. He was nothing. He ended up, he died, and then they just kind of forgot about him. But all the fight scenes with him and Ahsoka I thought were awesome. I just love that faceless, evil Sith character, that kind of dark sider. I thought he was great. And I thought his battles with Ahsoka were the standout. And I loved also Baylan versus Ahsoka. Anytime they fought, it just seemed like so much weight. And he was just like really going to town on her. And she... it was just the different fighting styles, how much stronger, just like kind of physically imposing he was compared to her, more like acrobatic, flashier, faster. So that was cool. And then one thing that comes to mind just in the later episode was when Ezra blocks Shin's lightsaber with the Force, and it kind of makes that weird wavy, warpy effect happen. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, overall I thought that and that was one of the things that carried the show, is when they did get to the action sequences, they were all fairly strong.
Yeah, and the effects and cinematography were good too.
So you felt quality overall. It seemed to me that the quality overall was, with all the set pieces and the production and the special effects, everything seemed fairly consistent to me, with my layman's eye.
I thought Boba Fett and especially Obi Wan were pretty iffy when it comes to production value and effects. I mean, obviously, it all looks great if you're comparing it to movies from like 50 years ago or whatever. But especially Obi-Wan, I just remembered they really leaned heavily on that, what's it called? The volume, which is basically like a green screen projector kind of thing, where it's not, instead of a green screen, it's actually showing the environment. The room, but they use it as like a crutch in Obi-Wan, where you could, everything was just a big wide open space with a background, and that was it. Here, they definitely did a better job of blending actual set elements with the volume and CGI and everything else, and just overall, it looked a lot more consistently good than Ahsoka or Obi Wan and Boba Fett.
Couple of droid shout outs we did get. I'm just a huge fan of David Tennant, so just having him show up as Huyang.
Yeah, they say they pronounce it Huyang. I would have thought Huyang, but it is weird that he's British, but he seems to have like an Asian name. I thought that was. Yeah. I mean, I'm not familiar with that character at all, but I loved him. He was hilarious, and David Tennant is awesome.
You got the obligatory original Star Wars appearance by C-3PO.
I was surprised. I was not expecting him to show up, and I was certainly not expecting it to. I mean, I figured Anthony Daniels would do the voice, but apparently it was him in the costume too.
Oh wow. I didn't know that, yeah.
So, yeah, and he's like 93, and he's still getting in there, so I have to shout him out for that.
Jeez, that's awesome. That's crazy. And, of course, he makes his obligatory reference to Leia, who...
Yeah, they really try... I'm sure they would have included her if there was any way of doing it, because it seemed like they were really dancing around trying to mention her... So she's still like relevant in there, but obviously they were limited in their options.
Yeah. So overall, I would say enjoyed it. Didn't love it. I would like to see what they do in a second series. I'm not clamoring for it. Definitely overall, it was fairly solid, but not without the many pitfalls of Disney Plus Star Wars and Star Wars in general. Definitely doesn't come close to Andor. But but I love the character, and I love Rebels and Clone Wars, so that's really the draw for me. And a lot of the callbacks to those shows, plus the action scenes, I would say were probably the most compelling things for me about this.
Oh yeah, I would definitely agree, and I'm interested in seeing where they go from here, because obviously it did leave on a fairly big, maybe not big, maybe big cliffhanger. And obviously there's a couple directions that they could go. I've heard that they're planning on giving Filoni a movie. I don't know if that is going to come after a season 2 or if that will act as a continuation of this. Right. Well,
and it's funny too because now Thrawn and Ezra are back, and Ahsoka and Sabine are stuck. So it's
how are they going to get back?
Yeah,
I'm sure hitch a ride on the whale.
Yeah, I'm sure the whales will come by and give them an Uber back to.
Yeah, no, I have a feeling that's probably going to be solved fairly quickly because they got to get back and get into the action again. I'm curious to see if they'll recast Ray Stevenson.
Oh, right.
Or if they'll just kind of forget about him. It would suck because I loved his character, but at the same time, I feel like he brought such a great weight to everything. I don't know who could possibly replace him.
Yeah. I'd rather see them say he got swept away, either turned into one of those old Force people statues, or got swept away by the whales or something.
I do think it's a little funny that they're trying to salvage this post Return of the Jedi era with Ahsoka, when I would obviously negative 0% chance of this ever happening. It's just such a bummer that we didn't get to see Luke, Leia, and Han actually fulfill or do anything meaningful post Return of the Jedi. And all of these Star Wars shows, I'm just I have to force myself to be enthusiastic about it just because I know it's all leading to the terrible sequels.
And with that, I say we wrap.
Yeah, before I start going off on sequels.
So as we wrap up, just a reminder, if you did enjoy this episode, please do give us a like and a follow on our Twitter page at worldsbeyond_podcast, and/or like and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. It does mean the world to us. And thanks again for listening. Got plenty of stuff coming up. I think we're going to dip back into some scary movies as we're in the thick of Halloween season, and very excited about that. So more to come there. And then Loki just kicked off. I watched the first episode.
Oh, yeah, I still got to watch the first episode.
Yeah, I haven't watched the second episode yet, so I won't even tease that at this point, but that'll be coming up. And then the Marvels to follow. So lots coming up. Any final thoughts from you, Cam?
Not really. No, I think we pretty much covered everything. I'm excited to get back into the horror season. It is Friday the 13th today, so I think I'm gonna go and watch a terrible Jason movie. Just
gotta watch
gotta
watch the Jason in Space one because of
oh
of
God,
Star Wars.
I haven't. Yeah, I've heard. Oh, actually, yeah, it does relate to Star Wars. I've heard that's terrible though. I'm actually not a huge fan of the Friday the 13th movies, to be honest with you. But feel like I haven't watched them in a little while, so I kind of got to go back just to in honor of the holiday Friday the 13th and Halloween coming up. But I'm actually gonna probably watch Jaws as well because I'm going to Martha's Vineyard in a couple days, so I want to kind of visit some of those filming locations because every time I watch it, they shot a lot of the scenes like right outside the hotel that we stay at, so it's really cool to see all that. So I'll send you some pictures and update you about that next episode.
Sounds good. All right, and I will end as always with my little plug for Lockwood and Co. Watch the show on Netflix. It's a show that was fantastic, based on an even more fantastic book series by Jonathan Stroud. Got a series 1 on Netflix and was canceled, did not get renewed. It needs to be renewed, and so watch it and participate with Lock Nation on Twitter and various other places in trying to get a season 2 picked up by someone somewhere, hopefully soon. And with that, we'll say goodbye until the next time. Thanks, everybody.
See you on the next one, guys.